Hello, beautiful people. So I am still in Dallas in my hotel, but I'm going to start packing, and I figured since I have ADHD, it'd be a good idea to talk you guys through some tips and kind of do like a talking video. So I'm gonna be probably moving around. We're gonna see how we like this. I thought it'd be a good idea to make a video about things that people with self-esteem do, kind of like how they act, how they carry themselves, kind of just like a baseline. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I think a lot of people don't know. They really just don't know how someone with self-esteem acts. And I say it because I wonder if some people have self-esteem but they just don't act like I really don't know, but I wanted to give a baseline of behaviors and actions that people with self-esteem do, how they carry themselves. And a lot of times we talk about like faking it until you make it, and I think that if you just kind of like do these things even though you don't necessarily feel like you have self-esteem yet, I think you will start to find self-esteem and you'll start to pick it up, because you'll understand that a lot of these things have to do with mindset. So it's kind of like you'll start to understand, okay, if I start thinking like this, then I will start to feel better about myself and I'll truly start to understand the value that I have. The first thing is that people with self-esteem do not let other people disrespect them and choose to be around people that disrespect them on a regular basis. Sometimes people get kind of caught up when it comes to dealing with others who disrespect them, and they feel like, oh, well, if I stop talking to this person, then maybe they're gonna feel bad or make them uncomfortable. When you have self-esteem, you realize that you can still love someone and want the best for someone without having to be around them. One thing I learned as I got older is that sometimes you have to work towards what is already existing, like what the current state is. So like, for example, you are trying to stay on a diet and you're having a hard time sticking to it. And so what ends up happening is every week you're like, I'm gonna stick to my diet, I'm gonna stick to my diet. After like 2 months, you have to realize you're not sticking to your diet. And so what happens is we get so caught up in being like, or trying to convince ourselves, I have to stick to my diet, I have to stick to my diet. But if you haven't done it, and 2 months is kind of, in my opinion, like a fair time to assess yourself, but let's say it's 2 years. At what point do you say, I need to call in reinforcements, I need to call in help? So essentially, if you have somebody in your life that is kind of not building you up or treating you with disrespect, after a while, you can kind of keep them around, but you probably need to start implementing serious change and saying, look, I can't keep having this person around me. Every time I'm around them, I feel bad about myself. They're negative, they're hateful, they have no thing positive to talk about, nothing to inspire me. I need to separate myself from this person. So that is something that I just do, honestly, naturally. I try to keep the friends and just people around me that are positive, loving, kind, generous. And I understand that there are some people who are going through it. They are going through trauma. They have some sort of serious event going on in their life, because people go through phases and seasons. But I try to measure them across a baseline. And so I try to be considerate of that. But overall, if somebody is disrespectful, not helpful, not loving, has no joy, no happiness, I get rid of those people, because I love myself and I don't want to spend my life with a crowd of people who are just so negative and so miserable, because it drags on you. The way that I look at life is in time, and it's if I surrounded myself with someone who is just mean for 2, 3, 4, 5 years of my life, that I won't get back, and I would have been sad and disappointed and negative because I was surrounding myself with this person. So the next thing that people with self-esteem do is they do not live in a lack mindset. Now, this one is tough because I feel like I kind of go back and forth, really high self-esteem, but this is something that you just have to kind of nip it in the bud. You have to catch it. But it's when something isn't going well, you start to think, I'm never going to find better. This is the best that this world has to offer. And that's with friendships, that's with dating, that's with jobs, that's with any opportunity. You convince yourself that it can't get better than the current circumstance that you're in. And so somehow you have to cling on to whatever it is because you're afraid that you're not going to get it back, or it's not going to be the same, or it's not going to be good enough, or you're going to have to wait forever. So you have to kind of teach yourself to be like, look, I think I'm going to get better. I believe in God. Hopefully you do. And if I don't get better, you hold on to it literally for dear life, thinking like, I need this thing in my life, or it's just going to be awful. And you start going through this mental spiral, and you have to say, look, either they do or they don't. I don't have to put up with it. And it's kind of a natural feeling. You'll start to do it more frequently, and it'll just kind of flow, and you just kind of operate in a way that's just like, that's your choice. I don't know. I can't really explain it. It's just something that I do on a regular basis, and you just kind of have to take a step back and be like, okay. It's a way to kind of remove that feeling of desperation, and that is where I think a lot of people with low self-esteem come from. They come from a place of desperation. And so I think once you start to target your source of desperation and kind of respond to it using like healthy speaking strategies, this can also be considered like a fixed mindset or a stuck mindset where you just feel like you can't make your life any better, versus a growth mindset, which again, one of my favorite books is Mindset by Carol Dweck. But whenever you start to like see yourself thinking like, I'll never get better, my life is miserable, and you start hearing this subconscious or even conscious like thinking thoughts or just talk, that you start to be like, no, I think I'll get better. And you just kind of start responding like that. Really freeing, really helpful, game changing. The next thing that people with self-esteem do is they just kind of go out in the world and put their best foot forward. That means like appearance wise, that means like life wise, that just means like you just kind of go out in the world and try to do your best. Now, I don't think that that means that you have to wear makeup all the time or you have to dress up all the time, but you're trying to look your best and be your best on a consistent basis, not because you need it, but just because you want to. So like one thing I was gonna say is, I think that there's this misconception that if you have self-esteem, like who cares what you look like? You could wear a trash bag, and you do wear a trash bag. It's kind of a hybrid. So if you have high self-esteem, you know that if you had to wear a trash bag, you would own it regardless. But if you don't have to, you're still going to try to look your best and do your best with what you have. That is self-esteem. And so this is kind of like a different mentality where people think, oh, like if you have high self-esteem, you should never care about how you look. I have really high self-esteem, and I just try to present myself how I feel. So I try to dress up on a regular basis. I am kind of over the top 9 times out of 10, besides when I'm working, of course. But I dress up all the time. I wear heels. I just feel like that's how I feel on the inside. So I kind of like to reflect it on the outside. But that's just me. Kind of going along the lines of the opinion one is that if people with self-esteem do not let other people steal their self-esteem. They do not let other people steal their joy. They do not let other people like come in and take it. That is so, so important, because I think a lot of times women, they have self-esteem and then they make decisions or things happen, people enter in their life, and they just either give it away or it feels like it's stolen and they just don't have it anymore. People with self-esteem, they truly do not let other people take possession of their confidence and of their self-esteem. Like I always like to think of it as like a metaphor. Like imagine you're holding like a basketball and you are like holding on to it for dear life, and someone tries to steal it out of your hand. That to me is like, you need to fight for your self-esteem like as strongly as you possibly can, because there are some people who are literally going to try to come into your life and just like snatch it from you, like some intentionally, some unintentionally, but you need to like hold on to your self-esteem, because it is a gift from God. It is a blessing that you have, that you don't have to hate yourself. You don't have to feel less of yourself because of what someone else does. So that is like a really important thing. Other things that are kind of along the same lines that could affect your self-esteem are sleeping around with multiple different people. I don't care what anyone tells you. It is a trap. It is a disaster. It is probably one of the worst things that you can do as a woman, as a human being, regardless of gender, really. At both genders, it's horrible. But doing that, like acting that type of way, it just is indicative of a lack of self-control, and you are easily manipulated because the world is telling you, oh, it doesn't matter. It is a lie. And there's diseases, there's so many things that could come about from that type of behavior. So that is something that is extremely detrimental to your self-esteem. And if you have to convince yourself that it's not, then you are probably still living in that delusion. And I'm sorry that you are still feeling that way, but I'm here to tell you the truth, and that is toxic and detrimental to your self-esteem. Even being sleeping around with somebody who's not committed to you is detrimental to your self-esteem. People who do I think when people are you up texts, I am fortunate that I never really had to deal with that. I know that I've heard about it, and I know people have dealt with it where they get text messages in the middle of the night from people. That is detrimental to your self-esteem. If you respond to that, one, please go to counseling. Please work on healing that, because there is no reason why you as a valuable woman should feel like you have to even entertain something like that. Because self-esteem, it's just you just don't, those things don't even come across your path because you already filter out people who have those tendencies. Something else that people with self-esteem do, or kind of how they think, is they know what they're good at and they know what they need to work on. I think, again, there's this misconception about self-esteem that you have to lie to yourself. Now, I did advise you that if you have zero self-esteem, you probably should start lying to yourself. But when you start to develop a healthier form of self-esteem, you are aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and you actually try to be as honest with yourself as possible. So I always mention this book, but it's my favorite book of all time, and it is Feeling Good by David Burns. And he actually talks about that the way to heal and to talk to yourself in a healthy way is actually not to lie to yourself, but it is to speak on your accomplishments or your truths in an honest way. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're I feel ugly, right? And you truly feel ugly. The way that you would say, I know that with effort, and I know that with consistent effort and attention in my appearance, I can grow to feel more attractive, right? So you don't necessarily have to say I'm beautiful directly, even though you probably are beautiful. Like I always say, if you are a child of God, if you're a human being, you are beautiful. But if you're struggling with that belief, you don't have to immediately counter it with the opposite belief. You can counter it with a belief that is true and a little bit easier to grasp and understand. So I don't feel beautiful now, but I know that one day I will feel beautiful because I'm a beautiful person, because beautiful people are kind people. So you're responding in a way that's true and honest, but it's also healing. And that makes sense. If you are out of shape, you could actually go to the gym and have a fire body. I'm telling you, it may seem impossible, it might seem really difficult, but I guarantee you, unless you have some severe heart and health condition, you can work out, eat better, and have an amazing figure. It's totally possible. Even with looks, you can learn how to do your makeup, you can learn how to, I feel like I look smacks. You can learn your color season, you can learn the best hairstyle, you can learn how to do your eyebrows, you can learn how to do your makeup, you can learn your fashion sense. There are plenty of things that you could do physically that would help you upgrade, and at least if you are a 3, it could take you to a 6. If you're a 6, it could take you to a 7 or 8. It can upgrade your looks. So I just think that once you kind of work on that, you will feel better about yourself. But again, you shouldn't have to have those things, but it does help. I just practice things not necessarily practice having self-esteem, but I just channel confidence. I don't know how else to explain it. For example, you know what I think is probably the best current example is a few months ago, I watched the Victoria's Secret runway, and I think that there was one Instagram or TikTok post where it talked about all the different models and all the different hardships that they went through, and it was this one went through a divorce, this one was cheated on, this one all of these things. And then when you saw them walk on stage and they just were so confident and just bodies tea, and they're beautiful and they're wearing these pretty clothes and wings and makeup is done and they're successful. I think that if you can learn to channel somebody to be like, that's the girl, like that is the energy that I want to carry out in this world. Like I want to walk out every single day as if I were a Victoria's Secret fashion model. It doesn't just have to be looks based. Like even if you have a serious profession like I do, even if you have a serious profession, you can still channel the confidence and energy. When I walk into a space, I keep my like posture good, I have great eye contact, I am friendly, I smile when I need to, I look people in the eye, which I already said, I remember names, those types of traits. Like you can just walk into a space. That I want to add in this video, I feel like I have a lot more, but I'm kind of doing these off the dome, and it is, you just have a goal. This is something that I also was kind of alluding to before, but it's like you have something that you are working towards, and whatever that thing is, it has your attention more. So I want you to understand that the world is filled with so many different types of people, and your brain on average could be thinking of so many different things. Some people, they can manage thinking about a few key things. Some people, for example, people with ADHD, they're thinking about more, or they're thinking about like probably 5 times, 10 times, however many times more things just regularly. And so I want you to understand it's not uncommon to obsess over something, especially if you have obsessive personality, especially if you have ADHD, whatever disorder or whatever, just the way that your brain functions. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But I want you to understand there are things that you could be obsessing over that are better for you. You should probably have goals. Like a good example that I also like to give is, imagine you're like, look, I want to be a successful influencer. I want to make this amount of money per year. But instead of making content, you obsess over, I have to make this content, I have to make this content, I have to make this content, and then you don't make it at all. That is an example of like obsessing over the wrong thing and not actually creating the output. Another good example, let's say you really want to get some sort of raise or accolades or something at work. Oh, I just need to do this. My boss said if I do this, I will outperform all of my coworkers. And if I do that, I'll get a raise. And you're thinking about that, but then you're like, I have to do better. I have to do this. And you are like obsessing over strategy and all of these things and all of these random things, but you don't actually do the main thing that you're supposed to do. So it's like you need to truly have goals. You need to have clear goals. You need to focus on things that are actually important. But essentially there's this concept that says some people obsess over things, but they're obsessing over the wrong thing. So it's like you want to use your time and be efficient. You want to focus on the things that are actually going to help you get to what you need. So essentially, you create goals. You create goals that are on target with what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and you work on that instead of obsessing over things that are not worth your time. So what I was saying earlier, there's generally different types of people, but there are people who typically obsess over multiple things, and there's people who obsess over a few things. It is not uncommon to obsess over multiple things at once, but the point is you don't want to obsess over the wrong thing for an extended period of time. You want to obsess over your goals. You want to obsess over things that are positive, obsess over things that are going to help you accomplish what it is that you're going to do. And that's what I was trying to get. There are some girls, some people, they will obsess over a man so they're blue in the face. They will talk about him, they'll repeat it, they'll have 20 conversations about it. But then when you ask them, what about this book you were going to write? What about this business you were going to start? What about this book you were going to read? What about this job you were going to apply for? They haven't done it because they're just so busy. But they're not too busy to obsess over something like a man or whatever. So I just want you to understand you do have goals when you have self-esteem, efficient goals. You have goals that make sense with your future, and you are focused on those things, not other people. So that pretty much sums up this video. I apologize for the scattered randomness that may have occurred, but I really wanted to get this video out to you guys. I ended up not really packing because I got locked in. But I hope you truly enjoyed this video. If you have any ideas or other things that you want me to talk about, comment below and I will. I just feel like this one just kind of came naturally. The other thing I was gonna say is like a little caveat: they don't let other people pressure them into doing things that they don't want to do or that are not aligned with their goals. They don't allow people to enter into their life that aren't aligned with their goals, who pressure them, who make them make decisions that counter their faith with God. Those types, like, if you have self-esteem, you can see through the mess that is not aligned with you or with Christ or your purpose. So that's a little disclaimer tip that'll probably be included in my like dating video. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me on this chaotic ride. And I'm gonna actually start packing now. Okay, bye.